In the last couple years, with all the crap continually going on in the world, animation has proven to be an especially strong source of comfort for many. And within that time, has managed to gain the most mainstream attention the medium has had in a while. The fan bases of certain shows like The Owl House, Invincible, and even more recent arrivals like Arcane and The Ghost of Molly McGee just about speak for themselves. But unsurprisingly, not every show that comes out is so lucky. Ignoring how incredibly varied the quality is all across the board, with how much animated content is mass-produced in the streaming age, so much stuff that comes out gets inevitably lost in the shuffle, getting undermarketed and underappreciated. And sure enough, we've had a ton of hidden gems across 2021 in particular. So many that Dan the Man and I,
Heyo, Dan here,
have both decided to put a spotlight on some that we believe weren't quite given their due. Link to his video is at the top of the description. Keep in mind, in both our lists, we're only going to be covering cartoons that premiered in 2021. Sorry, Duncanville, you'll get your chance some other time. So, in no particular order, here are 5 programs that I would highly recommend you guys check out. Yeah, I bet you already forgot about this one. Produced by Cartoon Network Studios Europe, Elliott from Earth was announced in 2018 and seemed like an exciting next step after their success with Gumball, only for it to come and go with extremely little fanfare and even less of an indication as to where the hell it's even going. Which is a true shame, because this was a show that caught me by surprise in a way few others have matched. The idea of a kid getting sent to an alien hub world and befriending some of its inhabitants is pretty standard isekai, but the amount of imagination, atmosphere, and charm on display elevates it more than you'd initially think. To start with, Elliott's not alone on this adventure. One of his mothers, Frankie, is along for the ride too, and their dynamic is so refreshingly lovable. They have their fair share of mother-son conflict, of course, but most of the time, they're actually on the same page and incredibly supportive of each other, which makes sense given their respective difficulties established.
So your space rock just floated, said our names, and punched a hole in the wall, right?
Yep. What do you think we should do?
Follow it?
Yeah.
Of course, you also have Mo the dinosaur, who forms a friendship with Elliott where they often goof around together and get into comedic antics. But despite that, their dynamic proves very heartfelt and downbeat. In general, the show really knows to let the interactions and emotions speak for themselves, and when the show does prioritize the humor, it's surprisingly really varied, again like Gumball, and adds a ton of character to the environment.
I'm not as young as I look. My species ages in reverse, you see.
How does that work when you're born?
It's complicated, and it requires years of counseling.
The technical quality, however, is where things really get interesting. The round-looking designs may take some getting used to, and they don't showcase a particularly wide range of emotions, but there's such a memorability to so many of the alien designs in particular, with just how diverse and imaginative they are. But they more than make up for any shortcomings with the art direction, particularly the colors, shading, and backgrounds. It really adds to the immersion of it all. And the sound? Oh my god, just listen to it!
Wow. This planet is like nothing I've ever seen.
Man, between the whimsical instrumentation, all the little ambiance, and how it's all mixed with the dialogue, I do not know which is better. I would legit buy a soundtrack if one somehow ever released. It blew me away that much. There's even a nice casual progression to the overarching plot of the show, where you find you aren't really expecting what is about to happen because of how unexpected the environment is, but it never feels insane either. Which is why it sucks the show's fate remains a complete mystery. It just dropped in March, aired 16 of the 20 announced episodes, and disappeared just as quickly as it came up. I guess there must be at least a little more left, but with how long it's been with no signs along with them losing their showrunner before it even began airing, I feel like there must be some behind the scenes details we just don't know yet. But in any case, the Centrium is definitely a place worth exploring for yourself.
So, what do we do now?
I have no idea, kiddo. Pretzel?
It's incredible that despite how critically acclaimed and beloved Aardman's stop motion is, so frequently any new work for them slips completely past the radar, and their recent Christmas special, Robin Robin, is very much among their overlooked gems. The special is about a robin raised by a family of mice, who, although optimistic and determined, finds he does not quite have the stealth for heist missions.
Keep to the shadows, don't get hurt.
Whisper every single word.
Wanting to prove she's not a burden to her family, she schemes to make it big on the last open house in town, only to run into a magpie with quite the eye for human collectibles.
Got no personality, I let my lampshade speak for me. Hollow inside, you're not enough. Just stuff that hole with a lovely stuff.
But the main thing he's after is the star on the top of a particular Christmas tree, convinced that it'll let him wish for anything he wants. Thus, Robin agrees to retrieve it so they can both get their desired prize. Honestly, despite its presence, Christmas really doesn't play much of a role in the story, directly or thematically. But the themes the story does contain manage to complement the themes of Christmas quite well. Knowing your true place in the world, keeping up hope even in dark times, and understanding that the most valuable things in life aren't what you wish for. And they're all implemented really effectively with payoffs to match.
I'm not a terrible mouse. Am I?
There's really not a ton to the story, and it's not the deepest nor most original thing you could think of, but as most of us all know, the way it's presented is what matters, and Aardman brought their all as always here. Apart from the typical Aardman highlights such as the lifelike sets and brilliant use of props, I really like the scruffy textured look to the characters in particular. A real nice change of pace compared to Nick Park's more cartoonish look, especially since they still managed to make our leads look rather cute. Speaking of cuteness, you'll get a crap ton of that in the sound design. The voice acting is just so delightful, with each character sounding more distinct than the last, and each hitting their beats just about perfectly. None of them sound out of place at all.
Maybe I forgot to mention, I was raised by mice.
Explains the ears.
So tragic, so sad. Trying to fit in.
The entire soundtrack, from the little songs to the instrumentals, has that classic orchestration feel with all those woodwinds and laid-back tempos, which could come across as corny to some, but in my opinion only adds to the sense of wonder and intrigue all throughout the experience. And it's all mixed so satisfyingly too, much like Elliott from Earth, which, look at that, one of the specials directors was involved in. So if you want a simple but heartwarming story with a classical feel and some nice wholesome messages sprinkled in, then Robin Robin is something you definitely should turn on for Netflix. Like I said, it's not as much a Christmas special as you think. And besides, if you do want a more traditional Aardman Christmas story, you could go for the Shaun the Sheep special released just a bit later. Netflix really does have something for everyone.
You're not a mouse, but of course, you're a mouse.
Huh?
Sorry, is that confusing?
Nickelodeon's current animation has a pretty mixed reputation. Not just because of the on and off quality of the shows, but because of how much people now associate the channel as little more than the black hole of honest, hardworking talent. And they be right. But don't you worry about Middlemost Post, guys, it's definitely one of the good ones. It centers around the sea captain / postman named Angus R. Shackleton III, who's in charge of deliveries all across Mount Middlemost, where his ship remains perched. He recruits this super cheerful cloud guy named Parker.
I'm made out of water and ice crystals, Angus. Two things that are hard to kill, but super refreshing on a hot summer day.
And a walrus named Russell, and they have all sorts of adventures as they go about their work across this rainbow land, or just casually hanging out together aboard the ship. Pretty typical sounding premise for a modern Nick cartoon, but there's actually a lot about it that makes it stand out from some others. For one, this show was created by former SpongeBob storyboard director John Travick III, and as such, the show leans very heavily toward that show's brand of absurd mixed medium humor.
That gives me the chicken skin each and every time.
Half the wackiness comes solely from the stories they choose to tell, which definitely sound familiar for the most part, but are still made likable because of the show's distinct charm. There's a good escalation to them where they tend to start with a straightforward enough setup that quickly goes off the rails into something much more crazy and just plain fun. And while I don't personally find the show laugh out loud funny, the wit wasn't at all lost on me, and they know how to space out these kind of jokes to make them truly land. I should also bring up the dynamic between Angus and Parker. Just from looking at them, you'd probably expect a typical cranky curmudgeon and a well-meaning but rebellious weirdo. But no, they're by default incredibly protective and understanding, and work off each other very positively. There's definitely moments where they get upset at each other, but they're pretty short-lived and only really done for the sake of a plot. It's overall a very refreshingly healthy mentor-student relationship, and the fact the show is all about these two only makes it stand out much more. My favorite character though is definitely this caterpillar mech thing named Lily. Apart from an incredibly fun design, she has such a relaxed, take no shit, but still helpful demeanor that makes her such a spirit animal to me.
So you don't know where Parker is, but you do know Parker's with a new friend whose parents you've never met. Not once.
But yeah, there's really not much else to say about Middlemost Post. It's just an entertaining show with a fun hook that's the right balance of silly and heartwarming. That's all it is, but it's all it needed to be. Just be sure to catch it now before Nick decides to bury it into the ground in 2 years max.
Let's get started on that litter so we can do it all over again tomorrow. Yeah!
To be real, I don't know how overlooked Maya and the 3 actually is, as I did see a fair amount of talk on it when it released, and it's certainly gotten a lot of strong reviews. But goddammit, it's not enough, cause this is legit up there with Arcane as one of the single best animations of the year. First and foremost, just look at this artistry on display. The Mesoamerican environment and character designs are so obviously Jorge Gutierrez, who poured his sweat and tears into this project, and it's probably the work of his where he was able to go most all out with this aesthetic. But that's not all. The angles, camera choices, lighting, cinematography, color scripting, effects, etc. are oh so consistently impressive. This legit looks cinematic worthy, which only becomes more impressive when you recall this is a 4.5-hour miniseries made in Blender. Just pure eye candy all around, and it's a real shame the animation studio had to close. And the only thing that could match the visuals in scope is the story. Warrior Princess Maya is celebrating her quinceañera, only for her land to get under-attacked by the underworld, revealing that she is in fact half god.
Your father recognized your necklace. Belonged to a death goddess.
And must be sacrificed to God of War Lord Miklan, putting the kingdom in a precarious spot. But then she discovers an ancient prophecy showing the needs to gather 3 unique warriors from their neighboring kingdoms, who they don't particularly get along with, and that they all must work together to put Miklan in his place. And yes, it is every bit as epic as it sounds, and then some. The tone for this is unbelievably strong. It is dramatic at virtually every possible corner, and so damn many of the emotional beats hit hard. You guys think that one scene in Amphibia was shocking for a family show? We straight up have established characters die in the 2nd episode. Those are the kinds of stakes we're dealing with here. And don't even get me started on the action scenes. They're so fun, energetic, well placed, just oomph.
Cover me, Jimmy! Die, Skeleton Twins! Skeleton Twins!
I will say the comedy can feel a little much sometimes, but the jokes themselves work more often than not, generally being used to help us really get to know the characters, who are all so incredibly distinct and enjoyable both on their own and as a group, even if the dynamic isn't necessarily the most fleshed out. Honestly, there's just so much stuff to praise about Maya, I simply can't contain it in a single section of a larger video. I may one day end up doing a full-on breakdown of this miniseries, because it really is that much of a masterpiece in my opinion. So if you haven't checked this out yet, I especially urge you to do so when you get a chance. It is the Over the Garden Wall of 2021. Wow, a 3rd Netflix entry in the list of 5. It's almost like the service is really good at burying its content or something. But anyway, as someone much more educated on the subject would attest, hip-hop does not have a particularly great rep in the world of animation. Occasionally you have a bit that comes from a place of love and respect, but most depictions range anywhere from well-meaning to just plain cringe. In comes Karma's World on Netflix, created by none other than Ludacris. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either, but goddamn, was this the hip-hop cartoon that we all needed.
Stick around, I'ma show you what went down.
Like, the show embraces the art all over its sleeves. It is the main backdrop of the show. Rap numbers are littered all over the place, including the openings and imagined spots present in each and every episode. And these are seriously written and performed with such an authenticity that we rarely get to see. Our main character Karma is voiced by an unknown talent named Asia Bryant. It's funny, this is her first real acting gig on her IMDb, and yet she proves herself to be so perfectly natural in the role thanks to her hip-hop experience alone, that I'm actually blown away.
Disagreement, I hate that. I really wish we could change back. Just keep it real, let's face facts. It's my first day of middle school! Up top!
Not only that, but the majority of the plots are centered around hip-hop as well. And even if you aren't into that like I am, the show's still written in an accessible enough way where the morals they tell are applicable to many other situations in life. You've got stories about writer's block, overcoming defeat, being the bigger person when confronted, over backdrops of varying scopes like a talent show, a lost dog, a freaking treasure hunt. It gets pretty crazy. These are mostly episodic, but this is also one of those shows where many plot threads carry over from one episode to another. Most notably, the rivalry between Karma and Crash, the school's poetry slam jam, and this thing involving the local record store that I'm not going to spoil. And they're always told with a certain uniqueness that makes these messages stand out than they would in any other cartoon like it. Not just with the hip-hop aesthetic, of course, but the kind of perspective where this is told as well. One episode that especially comes to mind is the one where Karma's friends end up accidentally making hurtful comments about her hair.
Can you do your hair like normal hair? You mean, can black people do their hair like yours? Well, yeah.
The fact they give a lesson about embracing your appearance to a black girl is in and of itself great, but the episode outright makes it about the hairstyles of black women.
You come from a long line of black women with beautiful hair, especially me.
This is the kind of smart, non-patronizing rep we need to see more of, especially with kids. The characters apart from Karma herself are admittedly on the forgettable side, but it really is the style and empowerment that will keep you watching. This is easily the single least talked about program on this entire list, which given its aforementioned rep is particularly sad. So I would definitely encourage you to help boost its numbers a bit, either on Netflix itself or its official YouTube uploads. The very least we could give it right now is its own Wikipedia page. Come on guys, do it for Karma. And because there were just that many shows under the radar this year, I'm going to briefly mention some more and mention why I decided not to cover them on this list. City of Ghosts, a really thoughtful, calm, lovingly crafted series that deserves much better than it got. The problem is that, although I respect this vision beyond belief, it just couldn't appeal to me personally, try as I did. Kid Cosmic. This is a weird one, because as great as this series is, and as deserving as it is of much more attention, what love it did get was very much within the cartoon community. So I'm assuming most of you watching are familiar with this already, thus I decided it wasn't worth bringing up here. Villainous. If only this was able to be released in North America. High Guardian Spice. This show wasn't exactly overlooked, but it definitely attracted the exact wrong crowds, and as such, it got far too much of a bum rap. The show was still left out because it lost me after a point. I can't exactly call this show good, but it's like a 3 out of 10 at worst, guys. Just move on and hope the crew members have actually moved on in their careers instead of picking apart this passion project to hell and back. So obviously, with the large number of animations that get released nowadays, I don't expect people to check out everything. But the great thing about modern animation is just how there's something for everyone. So as great as most of the current A-listers are, it would be a big disservice to only involve yourself with the same few. At a time when word of mouth are all a large number of shows have to work off of, shedding the light on some hidden gems are some of the best things we as animation fans can currently do. And that is basically why I made this video. This was by no means meant to be comprehensive, and I'm sure Dan and I missed a few of your own favorites this year. And if so, please let us know what they are. And if even a few of you have decided to check out one or more of these projects after watching, I did my part. May 2022 give us so much more greatness, and hopefully less that gets lost in the shuffle.